Hey dudes, welcome to Splat from the Past, the only 80s themed horror and sci-fi show where things can get totally radical. Now today is a very special episode. I'm going to be interviewing my first ever Jason Vorhees, CJ Graham, from Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives, and I'm so fucking excited. I met CJ last year at Son of Monsterpalooza in Burbank, and he was hella cool. And I haven't interviewed a Jason before, so I'm fucking excited that he's the first one because he's a really cool guy. It's going to be my second member of the cast interviewing. I interviewed Carrie Noonan last year, and so I'm pretty excited about this and stuff. He's a really cool guy, like I said, and yeah, there's really not much to say. So here is my interview with CJ Graham. Hi, CJ.
You got it. What's up, Tommy?
Hey, how you doing, man?
Never a bad day, man. Never a bad day. How about you?
Oh, I am great. Thank you for asking.
Sorry for being a little late.
Oh, it happens quite often. Don't worry. It's such an honor because you're the first Jason I've ever had on.
Well, then you don't need to interview any other Jason. So you're done. That's it.
Yeah.
Have your bucket list.
Well, you would have been number 3, but Ted White was traveling last month and couldn't do it, and Steve Dash turned me down last week.
Wasn't Steve Dash up in Sacramento a couple months ago?
Yep, I met him too.
Okay.
Yeah, he was a good guy. Yeah.
Well, now you've got the best. You don't have to worry about the rest.
Yes. Although I have met Kane and Ari, and they're pretty cool too.
I think Ari has, come a long way. He's in the movie for a minimal amount of time, but he's made a career, because he is an entertainer. He loves music. He's had everything from rock bands to Jamaican bands, to rap bands, to horror bands. I mean,
yeah.
Telling you, Ari's been up and down all around with it, but he's into entertainment. That's his thing,
Mm-hmm.
He has just had a great career, regardless of the Jason concept. But he's been the best ambassador, and it's not because he did 4 of them, as much as him going out every weekend or every other weekend doing conventions and talking to the fans and keeping the Friday the 13th concept active in people's minds.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, he's done just a lot with it, and I think he's a lot of people's favorite Jason for that reason because he just does so much for it,
Yeah, and I always say that he's been a great ambassador for it because he's being out there, every weekend, every other weekend for the last, sincerely, 20 years doing conventions. I mean,
yeah,
he's a big part of the success and the longevity, and you've met some of the other Jasons, and everybody contributes well to the overall package, as far as the platform. But I think Kane has done a lot more work than all of us when it comes to the convention circuit of these events.
you're right. I think you might be right about that. I mean, I see that guy on Twitter. I mean, every weekend he's at a convention. It's crazy.
Yeah. So that's one thing is like he was at a convention this past weekend in Baltimore,
Mm-hmm.
and working just as hard as can be. I think Steve Dash was there also.
Yeah. But yeah, I met you last year at Son of Monsterpalooza in Burbank.
Yeah, that was the first time I'd done the Monsterpalooza or Son of Monsterpalooza, so we'll see if they give me a shout this year to come in. It's a Monsterpalooza and Son of Monsterpalooza are very, Hollywood orientated as far as people coming in.
Yeah.
A lot of the different actors and actresses and special effects people and movie producers are so able to, go over to Burbank or Pasadena to see the show or participate in the show. It's a lot easier than getting on a plane for 2, 3, 4, 6 hours to go to the East Coast.
Yeah. I had to skip both of them this year, but fortunately I'm making both Sinister Creature Cons this year. And Yeah, I love going to Monsterpalooza, especially the Pasadena one. I hope they invite you to the Pasadena one because it's actually a much better venue than the Marriott in Burbank. There's a lot more elbow room, and you can cram just, oh my God, the whole city of Pasadena in there. It's so great.
Good, great. Well, we'll see what happens. We'll go from there.
Uh,
So, and then next week, of course, what's up?
Sister Creature Con.
That's right. We're going to be in Sacramento, so we should talk about that. What are you going to? You're going to be there for sure?
Yep, I'm going to be there for sure. I'm bringing my mother with me. And yeah, I mean, she's not a big horror fan, but she knows how much I love it, and I don't drive, so she's going to take me over there.
Well, you know what? She's supportive of something of your interest. You know, some people are interested in playing baseball or football or academics or chess. You know, so it's cool that she supports what you engage in, whatever it is. And in this case, it's the horror concept and the comic con concept. They've all become one, kind of meshed together over the last 15 years.
Oh yeah, it took her a while to come around with it. She didn't want to take me to conventions when I was a kid, but I'm glad now that she's supportive of it. I'm very lucky.
Well, I bet you she gets a chance for her to see some of the actors and actresses, from the 80s and 90s, and even go back as far as William Shatner from Star Trek. He's out there doing an occasional show.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of older people find that interesting because they used to watch those shows on TV.
Yep, absolutely. So going back to the beginning, I mean, I've done my research and found that you've worked in the nightclub industry for years. Is that something you wanted to do at an early age?
No, actually, it was just by fault that I ended up running nightclubs. I went to LA and was interested in the LAPD or the sheriff's department, and I was looking at options. And of course, you take a regular job and then you take a part-time job because you have to have two jobs to support yourself. So I worked in the daytime at a regular job at a food and beverage Walk Poppers. It was called Universal Studios.
Right.
And in the evening, I picked up a bouncing or a security job, doorman job at a nightclub. And with my background, just that I was a sergeant in the military, I spent 4 years, etc. I was somewhat oriented and regimental.
Mm-hmm.
Within 6 months, I was the general manager of a 15,000 square foot nightclub restaurant.
Nice. And where are you originally from?
Well, I grew up in Seattle, Washington, until I was 17, right out of high school and right in the military.
Wow. Yeah, my dad lives in Marysville.
Yeah, so I just, exactly what I did. When high school was there, I was done, military for 4 years, and then I just never looked back.
Nice. So was that a good experience being in the Army?
Yeah, for me it was. I expect a lot of people, and I'm very much a motivated person with myself. I did not have a father. He died when I was 3, so I don't know what that means to have one or not have one because I didn't. I think it just made me grow up a little quicker. Like I said, 17, I was in the military, gave me structure, organizational skills, leadership skills. I was infantry. By the time I was 20, I was a sergeant, E5, which is a platoon sergeant, squad leader actually, but we were short on E6s and E7s, staff sergeant, sergeant first class. So I had rank in my platoon. It ended up being a platoon sergeant with 4 squads, 4 infantry squads.
Did you get honorably discharged, or did you just leave?
No, you don't get to leave the military. You sign a contract. So
Oh,
I signed up for 4 years. I did my 4 years and got an honorable discharge.
nice. And what year did you? Oh, go ahead.
The military is not one of those things where you can go to college for 2 years and drop out halfway through, or
Of course.
years in the middle. Once you're in for the completion of the contract.
Of course, that's what I meant. I didn't mean to leave. I don't know what I was thinking. I didn't want to suggest that you got dishonorably discharged. Is probably what I was getting at.
No, no, and that's not what I took it as. But a lot in today's world, a lot of people just, they assume, well, I'll leave when I want or quit when I want, go to school when I want, and that's a beautiful thing, and that's true. But once you sign a contract in the military, you're locked and loaded, so to speak. So you're there for the duration of that contract.
Yep. What year did you move to Los Angeles?
I went down to Los Angeles in about '84.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went right into the club, the restaurant business, and started to just do what I did. I was, like I said, general manager. I was also the general manager later on in my career with the original Tramp of London, which was a private nightclub owned by Jackie Collins, Collins' sister, the author.
Yeah.
And, it was a members-only nightclub restaurant, and the membership included, people like Prince and Stallone, and then the list just continued on. So, I can tell you, Prince liked table number 43 and enjoyed red wine. He always wanted table number 5 and a couple bottles of Cristal. So, that's back in the mid-'80s, and it was enjoyable because I was right there in that Hollywood, crowd, not to mention working in Beverly Hills.
Wow. Yeah, I used to be a bouncer in a dive bar in San Mateo, California, and nobody famous was ever there when I was there. But back in the '60s, Ronald Reagan announced his run for governor there, and in the '80s, Clint Eastwood once visited the place, and there was a picture of him in that place on the wall.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Like, Tom McLaughlin, the writer-director of Friday the 13th, Part 6, another interesting person who's got a huge background of theatrical, obviously, and writing and directing. But, his passion is rock and roll.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to get Tom and Nancy on here. I'm negotiating with them, so to speak, right now. But how did you end up in the movie?
Well, I was running the club, and I got the opportunity to play a Jason role in a hypnotist show at our club, which was being shot. The taping of it was by the people, Real Effects, that had done the special effects for Friday the 13th Part 4. So they had the wardrobe and decided to put me in it. And once they saw me in it, they just thought the statue, the way I looked and positioned myself would be perfect. They kept saying they're going to cast you for Part 6. And I didn't really take it seriously. It was a nice compliment, but that's as far as I saw it. However, I ended up being called to go down and meet Frank Mancuso Jr. at Paramount Studios. I met with Tom McLaughlin. I met with Michael Nomad, the stunt coordinator, and left to right, right to left. I got into the top 2 and wasn't selected as the final Jason. However, the gentleman that did get selected was a stuntman, stunt coordinator, and unfortunately, when the first dailies came back, which was the paintball scene, they weren't satisfied entirely with the product on screen, elected to call me back, and Friday they called me back on Saturday, and by Tuesday they had me on a plane to Covington, and the rest is kind of history. I don't feel bad for the other gentleman because he's went on to have a very successful writing, directing, stunt coordinator resume for his entire life, and I understand he still does very well.
I didn't know whether or not you knew who the guy was or not. I was going to make a joke and say, was that guy Kane Hodder?
It's interesting. I do not recall. When somebody asks me that question, I always give the answer. And if it's a panel, when I'm on a panel and Kane's there, I'll always ask Kane, what's his name? And Kane knows him. And so he'll say his name, but I never really retain it because I'm not really, I know the person who's the name. But as far as Kane, that's one thing that, like Kane will tell you, he really enjoys the horror industry, and he's always the one to play Jason since he can remember. So when he got his opportunity, he seized it.
Now, had you seen the other Friday the 13th movies?
Um, well, I saw part 3 and part 4 when I was auditioning because I kind of wanted to get a visual for what Tom McLaughlin was looking for in a character physically and try to put together some of those characteristics or make sure I had those characteristics before my meeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Part 6 has always been my favorite sequel because it's got great humor, great killings. I think Tom Matthews is a badass in it. Um, I always liked how Carrie Noonan's character, she gets killed so needlessly, and when I had her on the show last year, she was like, yeah, she got killed for no reason, pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. I think everybody who participated in it. The cool thing about part 6, Tommy,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that it's right in the middle of the series now, but it also sets the platform or the stage for the future. I get to be the only Jason that has a Batman utility belt on, when I go after people.
Right.
I get to have the cool James Bond 007 opening where I slice the eyebrow and bleed. I'm very fortunate to have met and worked every once in a while when I see him, which I just saw him a few months ago, is Alice Cooper, who is a Roll Hall of Famer, but at the time was the man behind the mask, so to speak, with the music. So I'm the first one and only one to have a rock and roll. And then, I am really fortunate because I get to be the only one to come back to life with a Frankenstein effect with the lightning, thunderbolt.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you are correct. Tom McLaughlin did a good job of putting some humor in there with Never Leave Home Without It, which was the credit card floating down the pond, American Express, which is a big commercial campaign in the 80s.
Yep. Yeah, Tom McLaughlin, he's such an odd and eccentric guy from what I've listened to in interviews, and he's had such an interesting career. And yeah, I mean, he knows how to combine horror with humor, I think, very well.
Well, you may or may not know, but I've known him now for 34 years,
Mm-hmm.
32 years, I guess. And if you think about it, I've learned a lot. And I've been on panels with him and done interviews. First and foremost, his love was always rock and roll.
Right.
Opening for the Doors back in the old days on Hollywood Boulevard. But he also was a mime back in the old days. If you think about that, which everything is entertainment with the facial expressions without talking and body movement. Interesting philosophy when you put a hockey mask on because you're restrained or constrained to the fact that you can't show facial expressions and you can't talk. So you've got to show everything with your shoulders to your knees.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny to say this, but he's kind of a lesser known Rob Zombie in that regard because he does rock because he was a rock musician who became a horror director.
Yeah, he's reversed, and now that that he's still engaged in writing, from what I understand, and he's done quite a few projects over the years, but right now he's writing and looking and doing some scripts, and he's got his band back together from the 60s called the Splat.
Mm-hmm.
He's back there, out there touring and doing shows again.
Nice. Yeah, it's funny how I discovered this movie. When I was 3 years old, I had a VHS tape, and they had it was some show that was on that had commercials, and they were showing all the trailers for all the movies that came out in the summer of 1986, and there was a trailer for Friday the 13th Part 6 in there. And I don't know if you remember this, but back in the 80s, there used to be those VCRs that had the thing where you can just record the sound, without the visual. And I remember I hit a button and I accidentally recorded some really scary sound from some movie or something over the Friday the 13th 6 trailer. And I remember watching it, hearing the scary sound with, the little girl in bed and she sees the leaves blowing with the wind, with the door shutting, opening and shutting. And that stuck with me for a long time. And I didn't see the movie until I was like maybe 8 or 9 and stuff. And I was given a little bit closure that sound was not part of the movie. And that's how I discovered it. It's really weird, but that's how I did.
Now, it's amazing because the Friday the 13th image, the series, but the image has become a very worldwide iconic franchise.
Mm-hmm.
I don't consider myself obviously an A actor, but I will tell you that if you go anywhere in the world and hold a picture of Tom Cruise up, I'll know it's Tom Cruise. If you hold a picture of a hockey mask up,
Mm-hmm.
they'll tell you it's Jason. They'll tell you it's Jason from Friday the 13th. They may not know the character behind the mask, but they know the mask.
What was it like working with the cast?
I think everybody, you got to realize it was my first film, and I stayed off set as much as I could so that the fear factor when I appeared was a little more intimidating than because I don't want them sitting next to me and just having a great time. But this cast was incredible. They're the ones that are professionals. I've done multiple movies before that, and said that was my first. And they really trusted me physically to pick them up and throw them around and do different things to them that, it took a lot of trust for me to be allowed to thrust a knife in somebody's head or thrust somebody's face into a camera physically without hurting them, and at the same time being able to deliver a scary product.
Mm-hmm. I met Tom this summer at Sister Creature Con, and he's a very nice guy.
Yeah, Tommy and I, we did a show earlier this year. It was Tom McLaughlin. I think there were 3 or 4 cast members also. We did a nice show. I think it was about it for a second first. I think it was in Charlotte. And we all were there. We did a photo op with all of us. It was a Friday the 13th reunion, Days of the Dead, if I recall correctly. And,
Mm-hmm.
everybody was there. Carrie was there, like you said. And she's only done a few shows.
Yeah.
Tommy and I were there. And Tom and I, we did a couple good photos together because I've been able to put the wardrobe together where I do a wardrobe photo op at these shows that we'll be doing. And, Tommy got a jacket and jeans, and we did some great photos with the fans.
That's great. Do you have a favorite kill in the movie?
I always say Kane Hodder and I are very similar in that part. Kane's is the sleep and bake kill, and mine is breaking the sheriff's back. And his reason is very similar to mine. There's so much power that it takes physically to pull a sleep and bake into a tree and break bones or snap somebody's back like a wishbone.
Yeah.
I think it's much more horrifying than just the blood and guts.
Yeah, Deborah Vorhees? Yeah, when I had her on the show earlier this year, I was talking about how I like how her character's boyfriend gets killed in part 5, and she was like, "Yeah, but I would have loved a little more cracking of the skull so it could kill him faster." And this is coming from a very, very nice lady, from the South, and I was so shocked. I loved her, but I was so shocked that she said that.
Yeah, I think the challenge is, unfortunately, in today's world, we can get away with a lot more special effects on camera than we could in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah.
We were pretty concerned about blood. It's too bad because, I can see breaking the sheriff's back and the spine coming out of his mouth as you push him back,
Yeah.
There's some gory things that can be put to it. Even when Horseshack got killed, we took his heart out, and you only see a part of it. We also had a point of view, a POV, of the heart beating with blood gushing out of it. Stuff like that gets cut because if you don't, you can't get, like Tom McLaughlin would tell you, if he couldn't get the rating he was trying to get, which was R, it would have been an X rating in those days for too much blood and gore.
Oh yeah, all these movies have deleted shots of a lot more gorier stuff, I've heard.
This is true. Unfortunately, in ours and in the earlier days of filmmaking, they didn't save the director's cut, as they call it.
Mm-hmm.
People have canned all of their shooting, even though they had a lot of film. They have cut a lot of before, but they discarded it back in those days.
Mm-hmm. My favorite kills, I love the paintballers with Ann Ryerson and Alan Bloomfield did Bat Facin'. That scene is so hilarious. I love that. I love the way you kill Tom's wife Nancy with the spear in the eye.
Right.
The RV scene, of course, with Alice Cooper's Teenage Frankenstein playing. I mean, that's classic. You know, he did some good music for that movie.
Yeah, and I think that's the important part that I'm very fortunate talking about is the fact that, Part 6 really does have all the foundation or the platform of a good horror movie with a little bit of sinister comedy in it. But I think, with all due respect, I don't really want to go to space.
Yeah.
He
Yeah.
will tell you he's not really high on Jason in space, but again, like you mentioned on the word, it's too bad that they deviated so far to the left or right, and I'm hoping when they get the next one put together, they can centralize it and get it back to main stage.
Yeah, I hope so too. I can only hope. I've always been a Jason guy more than a Freddy guy, and I love Freddy too. Um, so the movie comes out and it makes money and does pretty well. But then what happens to you because you didn't make another movie again until Highway to Hell 5 years later?
Well, I was up for part 7 and scheduled to do it. John was the director, but Kane, like I said, big horror fan, really wanted to do it. Had to go to John, who he had worked with, the director, and John finally gave in to Kane, and then John had to go to Paramount Studios to make the switch. Again, I wouldn't have done what Kane has done over the last 20 years, continuously being out there, so it worked out much more beneficially. Actually, it was just less than a year after that we shot the movie Highway to Hell. It just sat on the shelf till 1991 for distribution, and unfortunately, in 1991, right before distribution to the public, the company, which was called Hemdale, bankruptcy.
Right.
Sat on the shelf until a few years ago when United Artists and MGM purchased the library and then just threw it out on a Blu-ray. And if you may recall, it had some pretty good players in it, including Ben Stiller was in it, I think, for about 8 seconds.
Yeah, and it was also one of the first movies that Brian Hegelin wrote.
Yeah, and so it was very green. But I think we shot it in '89, but it sat there for that year of distribution, and then in 1991 is when it was officially ready for release because they had some financial difficulties, and by that time the Hemdale was in dire straits, and unfortunately it bankruptcy.
Yeah, that's pretty genius though, because Gilbert Gottfried plays Hitler in it.
Yeah, he's got a couple parts in it, and then the big black guy that's in it, crossing the bed, he's got his eyes all sewn shut.
Yeah.
Was the first Predator.
Oh yeah, Kevin Peter Hall.
First Predator, and then of course you got Lita Ford, Rock and Roll Hall of Famer girl.
Yep.
So she's in it, and then you got, if you take a look at it, you've got Christy Swanson, who's done several films.
Yep.
And then Chad Lowe, Rob Lowe's younger brother.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good cast.
Patrick Virgin plays the devil, and he went on to be sleeping with the enemy opposite Julia Roberts.
Wow. Yeah, that's a good cast. So.
And Stiller's mom and dad are in it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jerry Stiller and Mira. Yeah. So why was that your last movie?
What's that?
So why was that your last movie for so long?
Well, this one was shot in at the end of '85. Well, actually, we shot in '86 and distributed in '86. And the next one was shot in '89, which was 18 months later. And then between that time, I did everything from Miller commercials, Miller Lite,
Mm-hmm.
to AT&T, Colgate, Gatorade commercials. And then at that point, I decided to go back into the casino industry. As far as the acting concept, Tommy, you have to understand, I didn't go to Los Angeles to be an actor.
Right.
You're 6'3", 250 pounds like me. You have limitations on what kind of roles you're going to take. You're
Right.
You know, the competitive market is a 5'10" to 6-foot actor for male lead, and that didn't include me, realistically, and I knew that.
Right.
So now, if there would have been as big of a horror following as there is today, I probably could have stayed on and went on to, you know, being one of the fortunate people to do a Michael Myers because of my size, or a Leatherface because of my size.
Yeah.
And really had nothing but a background of horror prosthetics, you know, which I would have been more than happy with, because I didn't really care about people seeing my face. I just wanted to, you know, do what I had to do and deliver a good product. Tommy, it's like now people still ask me today. I've been asked just in the last month if I got an opportunity to Jason again, would I?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting question, because when you see me next week, I'm still 6'3". No. My point is, you know, when I put that wardrobe on, as you've probably seen online, like I just stepped out of the 1986 film. I'm the same size, same character, and that's the nice, fortunate part for me, healthy-wise. But as far as would I do it again, Tommy, it would be, to me, if the script was a reasonable script and I thought it had merit, because I don't want to go to space. Okay, I just don't.
Yeah.
Because I did a good job in part 6. I'm real happy with part 6. But if it was a decent script, and I don't know what a great script is, I'm not that qualified, so I just say something that made sense and that I could produce and be part of. And I knew that I would do as well, if not better, than my performance in part 6 physically. I do it. But if I couldn't produce the physical aspect of it, or I wasn't healthy enough to do it right, I wouldn't want to take away from my performance in part 6. So I'd have to pass on the opportunity. But again, right now I'm again 6'3", 250, and as you probably see online, when you see me in the wardrobe just from a month ago, it's the same character from 1986 standing in front of you at the photo walk, you know, at your local, you know, Sinister Con, you know?
Yeah. Very well said. I mean, I'm glad that you're coming back, though. I see you got a movie in the works that you just did.
Yeah, you know, and I've got 3 letters of intent. I retired from running casino resorts 18 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have an SAG card. So now I've got 3 letters of intent out there, and we'll just see what happens now that I have flexibility. Where again, you know, I don't work doing films because I have to pay the bills. But to me, now it's just for fun. And if I get a job, great. If I don't, okay.
Right. You like doing cons, of course.
And I enjoy the cons. I've been able to do a few in the last couple of years because I've been running casino resorts for so many years at executive positions that I couldn't just take a weekend off all the time to go do conventions. So at the same time, I'm very fortunate that I haven't had the opportunity to go out, because when I do a convention, I'm very fortunate that I've got a good fan following, and I appreciate that. And you know, I haven't usually been to a lot of the conventions, so it's the first time that people now want to meet part 6.
What's the craziest thing a fan has ever asked you to sign?
I don't know if there's anything that's crazy, Tommy, per se, because everything either was movie related, or you know, there's books out there that you and I have never seen that were produced in other countries, posters that you and I have never seen in other countries. And every time I turn around, somebody has a new action figure that they've gotten online from somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Shot of all the action figures, posters, albums, laser discs. One guy last show had me autographed. He had taken a 33 LP record and cut out a picture of Jason with a machete in the middle with lasers, and mounted it into a frame and was selling them.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people out there with a lot of merchandise that like we've never seen before. That's imported from somewhere. I mean, it's crazy the things that I see when I go to these conventions. It's phenomenal. I didn't know that horror existed in this context, before.
And I think that's a good way of looking at it, because, Tommy, it's like so many people are so artistic, and so many people have an idea. I have people that paint monkey masks on rocks and bring them to me to sign. I have people bring gas tanks on their motorcycles to be signed, the hood of their car, guitars to be signed,
Wow.
of course, hockey masks, and machetes. You know, so I mean, when you think about it, there's such a large list of what is interpreted to the consumer or my fans of what's important to them. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I get a lot of those. Some people come in with steel figures that they've cut out at school, or
Mm-hmm.
you're cut out with a hockey mask to get signed for their house. I mean, there's some really cool conceptual ideas out there.
There certainly is. So next weekend, October 13th and the 14th, you'll be at Sister Creature Con in Sacramento, and I recommend everyone out there listening to come to the show. It's going to be a lot of fun. I go every year. It's really good.
Well, you know what? If they don't want to come, I'll just increase my body count from 18 to whatever it takes for the ones that didn't show up.
You heard it, folks.
You guys there, okay? Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it, Johnny.
Yeah, so I'll see you next week, CJ. And by the way, you have an awesome wife.
All right, thank you.
My pleasure. Have a good night.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, there you have it. CJ Graham. Ain't he a cool dude? Thank you so much, CJ. You're a really cool guy, and you have great stories and great insight into wisdom. If you like this video, everyone, please subscribe to my YouTube channel, add me as a friend on Facebook, join my Tommy Kovac comedian page on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Instagram, and all that fun stuff. Well, that's all the time we have this week on Splat from the Past. Until next time, this is Tommy Throwback Kovac saying, there's no shame in living in the past, because the present sucks. Later, dudes.